Is there a way to make domestic poverty posh enough to be cool and stuff so that Americans will address it? Can we dress it up in a Sally Struthers commercial, a Brangelina tabloid story, write it as an allegory, the hidden meaning being that we should probably save ourselves before we delve into the problems of others? Smother we will if we don't first put on our own oxygen masks and then assist our neighbors. Let us ask ourselves how it is that somehow hunger in America isn't as hungry as starvation in more exotic nations. How can we make our ghettos seem more like the jungles they are so that images of neglected children living in the concrete vegetation of our cities create as salient a picture as the distended bellies and dirty faces of kids from faraway places, so that people will stop going overseas to get brown babies when in many ways America's brown children are more impoverished and more ignored than poor Asian, African children? Why are we so apt to right the wrongs of other enslaved and colonized people when as a brown American I still get no birthright trip, cannot weave a safety net akin to those of my white peers out of the years of discrimination that black Americans have faced? Why isn't anyone stepping up to buy me a heifer, loan me some of their hard-earned money for college? And I know what you're thinking. Having a brown president doesn't erase the silent racism of this country. It merely amplifies the absence of the discussion. It has given us a false sense of security, and now this stealthy new form of racism swells underground and can be found in the form of experiments where Keisha Jackson changes her name to Emily Claxton, and suddenly out of nowhere, jobs appear for her. Experts confer, and the reason for this outcome is unclear. This is Occam's razor, where the simplest answer is the most likely, and the answer is that the fight is not over. But could I get 1 million people to recognize their privilege, to give me $1 that I could use so that those who unknowingly live with the stench of racism and discrimination might have a chance at rebirth and resuscitation? Or are most people convinced that we have won, that our work is done, when in the last few years we've had to deal with how many shootings, how many lootings of the justice system by supposedly eradicated racism? When there are mothers all over this country missing their children that we have forgotten because poor missing children, brown missing children aren't missing enough to bother looking for. So I know that the third world has its problems, but the real first world problem is that we've convinced ourselves that we have arrived, that though many of us are deprived of freedom, we are free enough. Freedom is not a continuum, it's an absolute, and I'm not absolutely sure that I can drink the Kool-Aid and be happy that I made it out. Call me a sucker, but I'm going back in to get my fellow countrymen, and it's not a win until they are all standing beside me.